Smash. Sorry, I'm sorry. That was really low-hanging fruit. I'm better than that. Hi, welcome or welcome back to my little now green corner of the internet. I am the Antichrist. I am Satan's favorite daughter. If you're new here, it is very nice to meet you. Government name is Kylie Roseanne. YouTube name is Haunted Hippie. Contrary to popular belief, I do not play Smash or Pass on this channel. I actually review horror movies. I do deep dives of horror movies. I do all types of horror content. If that's your jam, click subscribe. Join my little cult. There are no required worship services or anything like that. Besides, whenever you click on one of my videos, you do contribute to the worship of horror films. So click the like button and the notification bell, but my videos will always stay in your feed. Today we're talking about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. This film and this review has been such a long time coming. Oh my goodness. Okay, so for anybody new here though, before I get into it, I always start with my expectations of a movie going in, and then we talk about my spoiler-free thoughts, and then we get into a spoiler section, because as I've talked about very recently, your expectations going in inform so much of how you're going to receive the film. And this was a movie that was hugely anticipated by me for so long. I adore Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I only read it once, but I read it over the holidays one year and I just couldn't get enough. I blew through it in like 6 days. And from the limited adaptations that I've seen, I don't feel like it's ever really properly been adapted. The first adaptations, as iconic as they are, kind of missed the mark on several levels. It's pretty much telling a completely different story. And I knew that with Del Toro's reverence for the original text, we would be getting a much more proper adaptation. Maybe proper is not the right word, a more like true to the source material adaptation. Especially with the wide array of monster movies in his filmography. Not just monster movies, but also like helpful ghost type movies. Hell, he was even a producer on Mama. He has so much reverence too for just the monster. And I've been anticipating this for so long that I was still on Twitter when this was announced, and I was following Del Toro while he was doing his location scouting and he was posting pictures. I think I even responded to one of his Frankenstein posts. He was talking about maybe like how long location scouting was taking or something, and I said, take your time, King. I was also elated by the original casting, and then I was even more elated by the recasting. Originally, I thought, wow, Andrew Garfield, really inspired choice, but he's kind of a little guy. I know that a lot of men feel a type of way when I talk about height like this, but he's only 5'10". As a big girl, that's a little guy to me, okay? You gotta learn to just live with that. So then when Jacob Elordi was cast, I mean, I won't lie, I was giggling and kicking my feet. I had sort of mixed feelings about that because I was like, the Euphoria guy, the Elvis Presley guy, obviously very conventionally attractive to be playing a monster, which in the book, the monster is not. The descriptions in the book are really remarkably terrifying. Anyway, then I, still was hopeful because I'm like, this is a giant dude. Jacob Elordi is what, like 6'5"? He's extremely talented. So I was really curious what this cast was going to be doing with the material. I love Oscar Isaac. Mia Goth is very much a horror darling. I think of the whole cast, Oscar Isaac definitely interested me the most because he's also an actor with a lot of range, but we have never seen him in like a mad scientist role, so I was really excited for that. One thing that stood out to me, I saw an interview with Del Toro. He talked about how he chooses actors because of their eyes, and that he knows if he'll cast somebody before they even read, just based on the expressions of their eyes alone.
My profession is hostage negotiation with reality. Reality says, I'm gonna kill it. And I go, no, you're not. Listen, put down the gun, let's talk.
Why did you pick Oscar? Why did you pick Jacob?
Eyes. I cast the eyes. 50% of film is looking at, and 50% of film is being looked at.
It's such a fascinating take, and I feel a little dumb because I'm like, it's such an obvious one. Like, of course, everything starts in the eyes, and Jacob Elordi in particular, maybe it's because he's very young and he has not pulled Bradley Cooper yet. He does have extremely emotive eyes. So I actually ended up seeing that interview clip before I went in to see the movie. But rewinding a little bit, before then, I remember when the first production stills came out, and I'm not gonna lie, those kind of gave me pause. I can't remember who made a video about the modern aesthetics of streaming movies, but they were right on the money. It was a channel that I hadn't heard of, that I don't watch, but just that video popped up in my feed, and I highly recommend it. And the stills that I saw for Frankenstein had that same exact aesthetic that this guy was talking about, and that worried me because this is the type of movie that I would want to see shot on film, and from the stills, it looked very kind of flat and very shiny. It had that digital theatrical quality. But I said, you know what? If that's one little concession we gotta make to get a Del Toro Frankenstein, that's fine. Then the limited theatrical release also kind of gave me pause because I know it's Netflix. I know it's Netflix's fault. But Glass Onion had a very wide release. It was still limited. It was only in theaters for like 3 weeks or something, but it was still extremely wide. Frankenstein, this was not the case. I had to go to a more like little artisanal theater near me when it finally came to a theater closer to me, because otherwise I would have had to drive like an hour through LA just to see it like the last month. And I feel like, I don't know if that's why, but it has appeared to me that it's had such a quiet release. And that's just so weird to me. Again, Netflix's fault, obviously, like not putting enough backing into the marketing, but I'm so grateful that I ended up actually getting to see it in a theater. And Del Toro's philosophy, I think, is really good on this. He talks about these concessions that he had to make, and I believe that he mentioned that he fought to get it distributed theatrically and that he was disappointed in the limited release, or somebody had questioned him about this in an interview. And he said, but ultimately, if I get to make the movie, and I kind of read between the lines with like, you know, him getting to make the movie with these means, with this budget, with Netflix backing him, then it's worth some of those concessions. And I don't think we have to make a concession on physical media. I do believe that's going to be released probably sometime next year. I've been rambling about my expectations for a little bit too long here, but the point is I just had a few moments of pause, you know, but for the most part, I was really excited. I was seeing a little bit of mixed results with my friends on Letterboxd, but for the most part, I was expecting to like it because of everything previously mentioned. Now, tell me why when I get into the theater, there is a random man in the partner seat to mine. Jail, go to jail. I was on the aisle, right? And like, I'm in this luxury theater where all the seats are coupled together. If you see that somebody has booked a seat by themselves, why would you book the seat directly next to them in the couple's seating? If you do that, you're weird. Oh my God, I'm sorry, you're weird. Also, he was a leg shaker. While the trailers were going and he was like shaking our entire seat, I just was like, oh my God, this movie's 2.5 hours long. Am I gonna keep my cool? The answer is yes. I'm never confrontational about that kind of stuff, but oh mama, that was gonna drive me up the wall. But luckily he fell asleep for a good portion of the first act. And then when he woke back up, he seemed to really lock into the movie and didn't shake his leg much. So yay. Also, I was at a luxury cinema, not my usual cinema, and the seats were pretty much exactly the same, even though at my normal theater, I'm pretty sure we have seat heaters, and at this luxury one, I don't think that the seat's heated. And the workers would come directly to people's seats to take their order in the middle of the movie. Yeah, nothing screams luxury to me like people literally standing up in the way, talking in the middle of a movie, taking an order on a bright little screen. I guess I just don't understand the concept of a luxury cinema. I don't know. Those things about the theater aside, my theatrical experience was magical. I regret that I wasn't able to review this before its release on Netflix, because I'm sure that that's how most of you guys are watching it. So like, I'm not to brag or anything, but that really was how this movie was intended to be seen. It is an epic. It is this wide lens, fairy tale, shot on location, grand journey of fatherhood and self-discovery. It basically met my expectation, though it does have a lot of flaws. I feel like some of the more negative early reactions to the movie kind of prepared me for that. I didn't read any reviews. I tried to go in as blind as possible, didn't watch any trailers, but I saw, you know, one of my favorite reviewers, he gave it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. So I'm like, okay, I won't expect a masterpiece. It has a lot of flaws, and I might ramble on about them for a while, but just to kind of cushion that blow, I did give the movie 4 out of 5 stars, so we'll get back to the positives, because ultimately I ended up just kind of overlooking most of these flaws, such as I hate the look of this movie, especially after Nosferatu, which I was not even crazy about. I didn't feel like he really added anything to the original source material. I feel like it just was a flex of modern filmmaking, and look how we can tell this story now. And it was one of the best looking movies I had ever seen in my entire life. Frankenstein was shot on an Alexa, which shout out liked. We shot liked on an Alexa, and we will shoot famished on an Alexa as well, which by the way, we recently crossed over 40% of the goal. You can help support my upcoming short horror film on GoFundMe. The link is always down below. But yeah, so they shot Frankenstein on an Alexa. They apparently had used a diffusion filter on it to make it look less hyper real, but it didn't really help in my my opinion. A lot of the times it almost looks like a nature documentary, and I don't know if it was because of the diffusion filter or something, but even though they're on location, sometimes the backdrops did look VFX'd in. That literally doesn't even make sense. I'm literally sitting here telling you, yeah, it looked so real that it looked fake. Like, why does Frankenstein look like it's in the Wednesday universe? Whereas Nosferatu, they shot on 35mm and they used vintage lenses. Again, I blame Netflix. I don't know why I'm going to dare to speak for him, but here I go. I think that Del Toro probably would complain about the cameras he had to use for Frankenstein if he wouldn't get in trouble with Netflix. And if he did, maybe he did point me to that interview. I'd be curious to see it, because it's just so hard for me to imagine this man who has so much reverence for especially Frankenstein. Have you seen the giant head in his house? That guy would just roll over and shoot this movie on digital? I just don't know. I don't buy it, team. I don't buy it. The production design is so gorgeous. I really feel like I was in another world entirely. All the makeup and the effects are flawless, except for Mia Goth's fuck-ass wig. Like I said, the wide lenses capture this fairy tale world actually shot on location. So why does it feel like an episode of Bridgerton? Now, it did do something well that Wicked failed miserably at. It had color. It had warmth. I'm sorry, I will never shut up about this. Look at this side by side. I know that it's pretty much impossible to make movies look like The Wizard of Oz now, but Wicked did not have to be this desaturated, shadowy hellscape. Oh my god. In this hyper digital age, Frankenstein managed to have color. It managed to have variations in the lighting. It wasn't as moody and gothic as I obviously would have liked to see, but having variation in the lighting on digital is extremely difficult. I think that we more or less failed at that with Liked. I really am not actually a fan of the aesthetic of my last short film. Actually, on our next one, I'm working with the same DP that we worked with on Morgan Killer Doll, and he infused a lot of color into that movie, and we shot it in just 6 days, so got my fingers crossed, putting my faith into him. So the color story of Frankenstein was serviceable. So was Mia Goth's performance, but I feel like she kind of wasn't given that much to do. Her character was very one note, and actually so were like all of the characters. Each character was an archetype of humanity, more or less, so this does feel intentional to me, but the resolution of each character's arcs were pretty easy and kind of happened on the flip of a dime rather than having a nice gradual progression, so it made the completion of their arcs a little bit less satisfying. Things were very simplified for this movie, and I don't always mind that. I've always said if I'm entertained enough, then I don't really mind if a movie is just serving up its themes on a silver platter, because I'm like, cool, right? Well, my brain doesn't have to do as much work. That's fine. And that was the case for this movie. Like I said, 4 out of 5. I was having a really good time, enjoying the performances, enjoying the production design, enjoying the themes presented. I do think that there was a little bit more under the surface than I'm sure you've seen by now, people making fun of the fact that at one point one of the characters is speaking to Victor and quite literally says, "You're the monster." You know, there's the famous quote that's like, I know writers who use subtext and I think they're all cowards. So these kind of blatant themes have their time and place, but for a story that's been adapted hundreds of times over the last over 100 years. The very first on-screen adaptation from 1910, okay? Why is everything in a 2025 adaptation being boiled down to daddy issues? Why isn't there a little more originality infused into it? And I think there is. I'm gonna get more into the themes once we get into the spoiler section, but I almost dare to say it's kind of like Frankenstein for Cocomelon babies almost. Is that cruel? Is that a cruel and unusual thing to say? I don't know. I think that for this story, it actually was kind of needed. Because like I said, I haven't seen the majority of adaptations, but from what I've seen, I do think this kind of adaptation was necessary. The weird 2015 version was as close as we got to the right look of the monster and also the exploration of his identity, but that one takes place in modern day, and the monster is almost like not like a Jesus-like figure, but he's hanging out with like sex workers and stuff, and he's learning about humanity and homeless people. It just reminds me of the biblical stories of Jesus coming down and like, you know, checking out creation and who he associated with and all that. To my understanding, Kenneth Branagh's adaptation is more faithful in terms of like the story structure, and it's Victor Frankenstein recounting the story to a ship captain and all that. So to me, it sounds like that one was pretty faithful, but I'll be so honest with you, I do have that one on physical media. I've tried to watch it and I got bored. It's not critically rated well. I think it has like a 40-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, like a 42%. So we were due for this adaptation, Del Toro's adaptation, a culmination of his life's work, much like Nosferatu was for Robert Eggers. And and it kind of fell flat to me in a lot of ways that I don't even know if it's necessarily like a fair criticism, because I think in a lot of ways this was the adaptation that we needed, and my biggest bone to pick with the movie is the aesthetics, that now that we finally have this decent, really true adaptation to the book, okay, then maybe the next time it'll be something a little bit more artistic and be infused with different stuff. I don't know, I've been kind of wishy-washy on this. I'm really curious your thoughts on it. Because it is the best adaptation that I've seen that is very close to the source material, it was a huge breath of fresh air to me. I really enjoyed myself despite all the flaws, despite feeling like I was watching an episode of Wednesday or Bridgerton throughout. It's epic. It has the classic gothic fairy tale Del Toro touch. Oscar Isaac has a very believable desperation to him. My absolute favorite sequence of this movie, I would urge you to especially pay attention to this scene where the monster is being brought to life. It's gothic. There's sort of a new infused drama to that moment of the story. It's raining. His long wet hair is hanging over his wild eyes. Oh, it's a great scene. And I really appreciated the themes of fatherhood, even if they were a little bit on the nose. They still were seemingly relatable nonetheless. I don't know how relatable. I'll try to get into it, but I am not a father. The main thematic standout to me is the monster and how it's treated in the world. I think that is absolutely this film's emotional anchor. Jacob Elordi does indeed do the kind of eye acting that Del Toro was speaking about. The kind that just like ropes around your soul and tugs you closer into the screen. I hope that when this hit Netflix this past weekend that people were all over it. I really hope that it gets its moment. It really is a beautiful achievement in filmmaking, and I hope that maybe with its simplicity it will welcome more people to the world of Frankenstein and to the world of Mary Shelley. Although he did end the movie with a Lord Byron quote. Like, what? Quote Mother Mary herself. Like, what the hell? One of my best friends, Leanne, even said on Letterboxd, like, Lord Byron jump scare. Anyway, if you're one of those people who's new to this world and you're excited about Frankenstein, I actually posted a deep dive about the origins of the book and all the adaptations through the 1930s. But first, obviously, if you've seen the movie, you should stick around for spoilers in this video, which I am about to get into. So, if you haven't seen the movie, you are no longer safe. Try your best. If it's still in theaters near you, that's the best place to check it out. Also, because it is so long and there are so many distractions at home, I just feel like that is the attention that this movie deserves. But let's get into it. Now, I'm going to share the top review on Letterboxd for this movie because I feel like it's essentially going to become my thesis for this video. Men want to give birth so bad, it's crazy. Well, yes. Then the second most liked review is from Zoe Rose Bryant. I have actually talked about her on my channel before. Hers is the polar opposite. She gets into this like really poignant commentary about the movie and identifying with the monster. She's a trans woman who I believe grew up in like Nebraska or something. It's a great read. I really want to focus on the men wanting to give birth thing, okay? Women creating life has been the great envy of men since the dawn of time. You can see it in the story of Adam and Eve. I feel like it's an appropriate comparison because the story of Frankenstein also feels quite biblical to me. The fact that first God created Adam and then created woman out of one of Adam's ribs or some bullshit. Del Toro's story of Frankenstein specifically reflects the male obsession with creation and also the male god complex. I was really excited with the opening of this movie because I was just thinking, wow, this is going to be a really faithful adaptation. I was really enjoying the opening of the monster tracking down Victor to this ship. Then I was really curious by some of the diversions that it takes with Victor's upbringing, seeing more of his life with his father and his father's favoritism of his little brother, something that I'm still not entirely sure what it was setting up. I guess it just was the beginning of the thread of fathers' disappointments when their creations don't live up to their sort of predetermined image of them. But I just feel like with the favoritism of the little brother, there's got to be a little bit something more to it. Then, of course, there is some pregnancy imagery we see in one of his anatomy lessons. He's playing with this little sculpture of sorts. And of course, his mother is pregnant and her death is more or less the inciting incident for the story. I think it is very interesting, the parallels, seeing his mother die in the beginning and then seeing Victor die at the end, how parenthood ultimately killed them both, but that is skipping way ahead. I loved the practical effects of this movie, and maybe they were supplemented with VFX, I don't know. But when he brings that weird twisted looking thing to life in the hall of doctors or whatever, I thought that that was a really fresh and exciting scene. I thought it was gross. I thought it was fun. I really enjoyed Oscar Isaac's take on Frankenstein, where he was just very excited. He had this extreme zest. He was very anti-establishment almost. And I was hoping to see that evolve a little bit, but for the entirety of the story, until literally the scene of his death, there's no real character growth. There is just whatever his current fixation is. I thought we would go through a little bit more of a journey with him the way that we do in the book, but the focus of the movie is more on his romantic life and the way that he pines after his brother's fiancée. That also is a storyline that I feel like I just didn't quite get enough out of. I think I would have liked to see maybe one more scene with Elizabeth and Will, and maybe getting a moment between them that makes her choice more clear. Though obviously this whole story is told from the perspective of Victor, so I don't know, maybe that just wouldn't have made sense. But in the book, Victor Frankenstein is the most dramatic diva. His emotions are all over the map. He gets ill. He cannot reckon with what he created until ultimately the monster comes to him and wants a companion. And in the book, he goes as far as building the companion for the monster, and then at the last second has like another psychotic break and totally just rips up the body. In the movie, it's all one note. It's all just one note. At first, yes, he is a little bit excited about the monster, but then he runs into the exact same problem as his father before him. His creation was not living up to his idealizations. I felt really taken by the fact that the monster could only repeat the word Victor. I thought that was handled really well in this adaptation, because all I was thinking about is how usually a baby's first words are dad, and how for a long time, or a long time is relative, children develop very quickly, but for a while, that's the only thing that they can say. And parenthood is so frustrating, it is so thankless, it is monotonous, and a lot of people aren't cut out for it. Victor, as it turns out, is not cut out for it. But to be a parent is not to just engage in the act of creation. It changes the entirety of the rest of your life. And the movie has Victor more in denial of this than anything else, until it seems at the very end that he accepts that he is in fact a father. Because it's not until then that the monster calls him father, and that he calls the monster my son. Oh, I did skip ahead a little bit because his benefactor, what was his name? Herr something. Henrik Hollander. Del Toro used this character, I think, to explore men's fascination with immortality. And this god complex goes right hand in hand with the desire to create, to give birth even. That was another character where it felt fresh, but like it could have gone farther with that storyline, because it wasn't like his death signified anything that drastic changing with Victor's personality. Yeah, he got a little strung out once he came into fatherhood, and he was having to hide that and stuff, but it just seems like that's who Victor was at the core of his being, is being a very passionate, impatient, abusive person. Again, just wish there was a little bit more variation in the personality. You see like a little bit of his softness with Elizabeth, but it's just not much. Like, it all just seems to kind of feed into his selfishness. It doesn't seem like it's actually a different sort of layer to his character. Once he falls into the same trappings as his father, and he is failing to mold his creation in his image, he gives up, and the monster is out on his own. The storyline of the monster, I also feel, is pretty cut and dry. I don't think I really need to explain that he represents essentially any kind of marginalized person in the world. I think his was an arc that actually was handled really well, because we get to see all sides of the monster. We get to see his softness with Elizabeth. We get to see him reaching out for comfort to his creator and trying to express love, but ultimately being rejected. We get to see also him yearning for the love of this family. We get to see him form a friendship. He goes through the journey that many humans have to go through, where try as we might, there's essentially nothing that we can do to kind of fix the cruelty of the world. Again, this is all laid out very directly. I believe that there is a line from Jacob Elordi that's about the nature of the wolves and the sheep, and that they don't hate one another, they're just acting due to their nature. That probably was the thread that most closely aligned the themes of the book, which are my absolute favorite, the themes of nature versus nurture. As an adopted person, I can relate to a lot of what the monster goes through in this story. The nature versus nurture debate is very personal to me, as someone who's had to like reckon with a lot of just shitty shit about my creators. And I think this movie captures the essence of the fact that, yes, I think we all know that this is our parents' first time alive as well, and we can empathize with that, but it doesn't really change the damage done. I mean, it's nice that in this story they ultimately forgave each other. I guess that's nice. Gives us a little hope, perhaps. Yeah, it's simple, but it was effective for me. I think the areas that I've already mentioned where the movie lacks are why I didn't shed a tear or anything at the end. I wasn't quite emotionally hit, but honestly, Del Toro's movies don't really really affect me in that way. They're always a tad melodramatic for my taste, which ultimately like turns me off, but I still appreciated them nonetheless. There's not that much else to get into. I mean, this is like one of the most famous stories of all time, been adapted a million times, and hopefully, obviously at this point, you've seen the movie. So if there is anything that I missed that you feel is worth chatting about, then obviously put it in the comments down below. We will continue the conversation. Like I said, definitely check out my Frankenstein for Dummies video. That one is very helpful if you're brand new to the world of Frankenstein. Or check out any of the rest of my content. I have a second channel and I post a lot of vlogs there. I also post a lot about physical media. And I have a Patreon where depending on which tier you join, you get a bonus video every single week. Some of those same perks apply to the members of this channel right here. So check it out, go have fun. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye.